as he ran forward. His men followed, charging into the open from three sides around the settlement. They were fierce, terrifying figures, wearing half armor and carrying weapons. Blood-curdling war cries rose into the morning air as they ran forward. The farmers were frozen in surprise for a moment. Then one of the younger ones was first to react. He reached for the axe he had just leaned against a water trough. Before he could raise it, an arrow flashed across the clearing and buried itself in his throat. He gave a choking cry and staggered, falling half into the trough. The water rapidly began to turn red with his blood. "Inside the house! Quickly! Maeve, get the father called. But it was already too late. The first of the raiders was upon him, and a sword thrust cut off his words. His face showed surprise, then pain, as he sank to the ground and lay, unmoving. His killer leaped over the body and shouldered the door of the farmhouse open. It was a mistake. The woman who had rung the breakfast gong was waiting with a pot of freshly boiled water, which she flung in his face. He screamed in agony and lurched to one side, dropping the bloody sword and throwing his hands up to his face. But the woman didn't have long to savour her momentary triumph. The raider following him struck swiftly with his sword and cut her down, her body falling across the threshold and preventing those inside from closing the door. The remaining men outside tried in vain to stave off the attack, but they were fighting with their bare hands and didn't stand a chance. In rapid order, they were surrounded and cut down by the raiders, without pity or compassion. They were badly outnumbered, and their attempts to protect their women and children were to no avail. The bandit leader stood back a little from the group who surrounded the fallen bodies. He'd seen one of the farmers dart aside and into the barn. Now he reappeared, his gaze intent on the men surrounding the dead and dying members of his family. He had a long pitchfork in his hands, and he raised it as he ran forward. He never saw the bandit leader. He only felt the searing agony of the sword thrust into his side, underneath his raised arm. He tried to cry out, but was unable. He fell face down. "You should have run when you had the chance," the leader said. Inside the house, 3 women cowered in the large kitchen as half a dozen men forced their way in. The women saw the bloodied swords and knew their menfolk were gone. One of them raised her hands in entreaty. "Mercy," she pleaded. But there was no mercy that day. The raiders, oblivious to the splashed blood and sprawled bodies around them, helped themselves hungrily to the platters of hot, sizzling bacon and fresh-baked bread that had been laid out for the men's breakfast. "They won't be needing it," one said. He added, "And it's a sin to waste good food." The others laughed as they crammed the food into their mouths. But one stood aside, his head cocked, listening. From the adjoining room, he could hear a furtive hacking, scraping sound. He crossed the kitchen and pushed the inner door open with the blade of his sword. It was dimmer in the bedroom, with no window in the far wall, and his eyes took a second or two to adjust. Then he made out 3 forms, kneeling by the back wall: a woman, a boy, and a girl, the children about 10 years old. The woman was frantically hacking at the wall with a heavy kitchen knife. Now she stopped, looking up in horror at the silhouette that filled the doorway. Strangely, the raider paused and waited as she attacked the wall with new vigour, creating a hole large enough for the children to squeeze through. He watched impassively as she shoved the 2 wriggling young ones through the exit she'd created. "Run, Seamus! Run, Molly!" she said. Then she heard the sound of a footstep and looked up to see the tall figure approaching her. She wondered vaguely why he'd given her time to let the young ones escape. Then she stood and looked at the stranger in the eye, facing him calmly. "The holy man warned us you would come," she said bitterly. "We should have listened." He drew his sword back and smiled, an ugly grimace of a smile that was without